Tailwind CSS is the most popular CSS framework in the market right now. A lot of developers are venturing or switching from other frameworks or libraries just to explore Tailwind CSS. Are you someone who's curious into starting Tailwind CSS, but you have no idea how to start? Or are you someone who's trying to figure out if Tailwind CSS is the right framework for you? Well, you've come to the right video. Today, I'm going to tell you what Tailwind CSS is, the cons and pros of using it, and we'll be building our first website or landing page. Well, let's get into it. I am Trisha, and I'm all about teaching you how to code something superb. So what is Tailwind CSS? Tailwind CSS is a utility-first CSS framework, and it is most popular because it gives developers complete control over the styling of their web applications. And also Tailwind CSS comes with predefined utility classes. What do I mean by this? If we compare Tailwind CSS to Bootstrap, we know that Bootstrap comes with predefined components. What this means is, if you would like to build a card using Bootstrap, all you'd have to specify in your classes is card. And Bootstrap will take care of the CSS styling in the background. But with Tailwind CSS, it gives you the building blocks, which are called utility classes, for you to build your own card from scratch using the utility classes, of course. In this way, Tailwind CSS encourages that you build your card however you would like it to be. So what are the pros of using Tailwind CSS? The first one is, using Tailwind CSS offers you control over styling. What does this mean? It means that you're not obligated, or should I say Tailwind CSS is not opinionated on how you should style your website. Instead, you can style it however you would like it to be. The second one is, with Tailwind CSS, you won't have to think of class names. It is very difficult to come up with a good class name for your components, and Tailwind CSS saves you time. Instead of thinking of your class names, you can directly style your elements inside your HTML files. The third pro being, Tailwind CSS is highly extensible and customizable. Meaning, if you had to build a website that had different colors than what Tailwind CSS offered, then you can head over onto the config file and add your custom colors. Tailwind CSS is highly customizable, and you can customize almost anything, from the screen breakpoints, spaces, fonts, colors, variants. Tailwind CSS allows you to add your own custom themes. The fourth pro being that Tailwind CSS is able to remove unused CSS classes, and this has the ability to make sure that your CSS bundle size is small. The fifth pro being that Tailwind CSS is much more easier to maintain. So if you wanted to change the color of your heading, you would go directly into the HTML file that holds the heading and change the class. Instead of using CSS, with CSS you'd have to find the corresponding class name and figure out if any other component is using the same class name, which may lead to a lot of problems and causing the website to break. So Tailwind CSS is much more simpler because you go directly into the file and you make your changes there. And then the sixth and final pro of Tailwind CSS is that it's easier to get started with. If you know CSS, then you know Tailwind CSS. What I mean by this, if you're familiar with how Tailwind CSS looks, you can see that Tailwind looks like shorthand CSS. And in this way, it won't be much more difficult for you to get started with it. Okay, so let's talk about the bad things, the cons of Tailwind CSS. The first one being, Tailwind CSS is inline CSS with pretty privilege. And it is, because we're just writing our styles, our classes inside our HTML, which links us to our second con. We are mixing mockup and styling in one file. And when we're using regular HTML and CSS, we make sure that we're separating these two and we're writing them in their respective files. In this way, we're making sure that the code is more readable and easy to maintain. Unfortunately, with Tailwind CSS, you'd have to deal with it. The third one is, as much as your CSS becomes small, your HTML file becomes larger. And then the fourth one, as discussed, your HTML becomes more difficult to read because you have all the classes that are inside your elements and it becomes clustered and it can be an eyesore. But all of these cons that I've mentioned, they can be treated as a personal preference. Some people don't like inline HTML, inline CSS. I don't mind inline CSS at all. As long as I get the job done, my styling looks good, then I am okay. So what is the best way to learn Tailwind CSS? I can tell you right now. You can even stop this video and you can go to the official Tailwind CSS Playground. The best way is to honestly start building. You can just start by building a simple button. You can start by building a simple form, or maybe aligning something centered, or anything basically. The best way you are going to learn Tailwind CSS is to get building. Because, as I've mentioned before, Tailwind CSS syntax is closer to that of CSS, just shorthand. And the best way to learn it is to get building. You can even stop this video and go right now and try to build a button. My only encouragement to you is you must get building something. You don't have to spend a lot of time watching tutorials, 4-hour tutorials. Even my tutorial, don't have to watch it. You just have to get building and getting familiar with Tailwind CSS. But then if you have no idea what to get started with building, then I have a project for you that we're going to be building together. This is the landing page we're going to be building using Tailwind CSS. As you can see, this landing page does not contain much. We're going to be building out the Navbar and the hero section here. Our hero section is going to include a heading, some text, and a CTA. And also we're going to align an image to the right. And we're going to learn how to implement responsive web design using Tailwind CSS. As you can see, as I make the screen smaller, we can see that the responsive web design is taking place, meaning that our application will be responsive on most mobile applications or screen resolutions. Okay, let's get building. So you want to head over to the official Tailwind CSS Playground at play.tailwindcss.com. And once you get there, you're going to be greeted with this boilerplate code. And you can see that Tailwind CSS is already at play. And when we read here, it says Tailwind Play is an advanced online playground for Tailwind CSS. And it includes support for things like customizing your Tailwind config file. So if you want to maybe add your own custom colors, you want to add your own custom breakpoints for responsive screens, then you can do everything in this file. And you're also able to extract classes using @apply. So sometimes it happens that your classes are too clustered and you feel like you want to contain them in a CSS class name, then you can do that under this file. And also it has a code completion with instant preview. So if I try to change something here, let me just remove this word advanced. We can see that the changes are instant. And let's try to change this text from gray to shade of red. And you can see that is also in effect. And another thing you can do is you can save this by clicking the share button. And so if we open another tab and we paste this in and we open this, you can see that this is instantly saved as well. And if you want to see the documentation, if you want to figure out how to do maybe padding bottom, padding top, then you can just quickly click on the official docs. Okay, there we go. And you're going to be greeted with this page. So this page is for installation. So you can install Tailwind CSS through the CLI or using Post CSS or your framework guides. So if you have a framework that you want to work with, we have Next.js, we have Astro, Vite, Solid.js, and all these amazing frameworks, then you can use that too. Otherwise, you can use the Play CDN. But there are many ways you can install CSS, Tailwind CSS, and the documentation are well written, so you're not going to be lost on doing that. And then what you want to read next is you want to know what the utility first fundamentals are, and then how to do hover states, focus, and other states, reusing styles, responsive web design, dark mode, and customizing the framework. So if you want to know maybe how to do padding, what is the syntax for padding? Let's just click on that. You can see that padding is simply using P. So P is going to affect both the vertical and horizontal padding. And if you want to only do for horizontal, then you can use PX. If you want to do for vertical padding, you can use PY. If you want to do inline starts, then you can see there's a syntax for that. But you can see that the syntax is quite understandable and you wouldn't get lost with this, but it's okay. It's our first time using Tailwind CSS. So if you do forget something or if you want to know how to do margin as well, you can just simply go to the Tailwind CSS official sites and you can figure that one out. Okay, so let's go back to our boilerplate, and what we want to do is we want to remove everything here and start from scratch. So step one, we want to structure our HTML, and I'm going to show you how you can do that with shortcuts. So the first thing we want is a main tag. So inside this main tag, I want to add a class name. So adding a class name is just simply putting the full stop next to the tag. And if we click, we can see that we already have the main and we don't have to type everything out. So I like using shorthand. So I'm going to remove that and I'm going to start over. So I want a main with a class, and inside that main, I want a header tag with a class. Inside that header, I want a nav tag with a class. Inside that nav, I want a div with a class. Inside that div, I want a span element with a class plus a div with a class. And when we click that, this is what we get. Okay, so let me add comments so we know what we are doing. So this one is for the navbar. Then this one is for the logo text that's going to be on our navbar. And the next thing we want to do is we want to have the menu items. So for our menu items, we want a div, and inside that div, we want anchor tags with a class. And how many anchor tags do we need? We need 4. Oh, I realized I just made a mistake there. So we need 4 anchor tags, and this is it. This is the syntax that we get. Let me just quickly neatify that because the tidying tool does not work for this one, so I have to like do it manually, and there we go. That's looking nicer now. And then we have our login button, and inside of this one we want a div, and inside the div we want an anchor tag, with a class like that. Let me also make sure this one is also neat looking. And yep, there we go. We have our menu items, but the final one I want to add is our menu hamburger for the responsive screen. So this one we're going to be building ourselves from scratch. So we want a div, and inside that div we want span elements with a class, and I need 3 span elements. So I'm going to do that and also manually fix each one of them like so. Okay, and that's how it looks, and we are ready to build our navbar. So let me get on adding our content inside our anchor text. So we have home, and then we have shop, about, then we have shop, then we have socials, and then we're going to add the logo text, which is donut, which is donut, pronounce it the way you would like. And then we have our login here, if I forget, and there we go. So first thing first, we're going to display everything flex because I want everything to be lying next to each other. Let me do that for better viewpoint. Okay. And then we are going to justify everything evenly. So as you can see, as I'm typing, we have autocomplete. So we have all these classes coming out of nowhere, and Tailwind CSS Playground automatically has the IntelliSense for us. So you don't have to think it out of the box. You can just instead, just as you're typing, and then it's going to pop up and going to help you complete some things. So we want to justify our content between. So that's what I'll be doing, like that. And then we want to make sure that it is horizontally centered as well. So I'm going to do item center, like that. And if we hover over this, we can see that we have our raw CSS code displayed for us. So the syntax for justify between in CSS is justify content space between, and this one is display flex, and then this one is align items center. So if you want to see the raw CSS code for a utility class, you just easily hover it and it's going to show you all these things. So now we want to build out our logo, which is that little dot that we saw on our demo. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a width of 4 and a height of 4. And I'm going to set the background color to blue. And I'm going to use a shade of 400, like that. And then I want to also make sure that this span element, since it's an inline element, it cannot have both width or height applied to it. So we need to make sure that it is a block element. So you do that by simply writing block, and boom, we have our blue dot appearing. And we want to make sure that our block is rounded. So how you can do border radius using Tailwind is you say rounded, and we're given options. So rounded small, medium, large, or extra large. So I'm going to stick with large. And we can see that our logo text and our logo, the circle, they're not exactly on the same line. So I'm going to be displaying flex inside the parent element. And we see that they're next to each other, but they're not exactly horizontally centered. So we're going to do items center, like that. And there we go. Everything is looking great. And I want to add some margin left so that there's some space in between. So I'll say margin 4. Ooh, that is too big. 3, maybe 2. Yeah, margin left 2. And then we want to increase the size of our text here. So we're going to say text. And we see we have different options. So we have extra small, small, base, which is the normal text size that we're using right now. And then we have large, extra large, twice large. Maybe I'm going to stick with 2XL. No, maybe 3XL. Yep, that looks great. So we're going to stick with that. And I want our font to be bold. So we're going to do font bold, like that. Maybe should I say semi-bold? It's too bold, but yeah, maybe that could be enough. No, but no, let me just keep it to bold. It's fine like that, bold. Okay. Okay, and what else? We need to change our color. So I'm going to change our color using text yellow, or you can change it to any color you want. You can even make it blue or green. Let me say green. You see we have different options, but I'm going to stick with yellow. And I want this shade of yellow, shade 400, like that. Okay, and I want to have a border around our navbar so I can see how everything is aligned. Okay, so we need a bit of padding on our navbar. So I'm going to say padding Y for the vertical padding to be 4, like that. Ugh, but that's too big. So I'm just going to stick with padding 2, like that. And something weird is happening. So I have this extra space, and I just realized that it's our span element right here. So I want to make sure that I remove the span from the flow of our content. So I'm going to give that a class of hidden. And there we go. We have our login stretched out and everything looking great. But we see that we don't have enough padding. So I'm going to say padding for horizontal. Padding for horizontal. We're going to say 4. Maybe let me just say 6, like that. Okay. And I want to move a button to more of the right. So I'm going to say margin right 4, like that. And that looks great. Okay. And then we want to give our menu items space in between them. So I'm going to click option and I'm going to click that. And then we're going to give our menu items some space in between. So I'll say margin 2, maybe margin 3. Yep, that looks great. And then we want to give our menus a hover option. So how you can do that is simply by clicking hover. And then I want our text to change from black to gray. So I'm going to say gray, a shade of 200. Okay. Oops. See now. Using UK English with US English. So I have to make sure I spell everything correctly. And okay, there we go. And then what else am I missing? Let me just first change our background color to be black because that is our theme. And immediately we see that our text is disappeared. So we need to make sure that the text is white. Okay, there we go, like that. And then, yeah, that's looking great so far. And we saw that our menu had a little pink underline. So that's what we're going to do. And how you can add that is by simply saying underline. And there we go. And our underline was positioned a bit lower. And how you can do that is you can say underline offset. And I want an offset of 8. And the color of our offline, we want it to be a shade of pink. I think pink 600 would look great. And when we hover it, I want this underline to disappear, so we can add that state using hover, and we can say no underline, like that. Let's see. Okay, that's working great. And we want the text for our menu items to be lighter than this. So I want it to be a shade of gray, maybe 400. And then when you hover that, yep, that looks great. And now we're going to style our login button. So our login button, I wanted to have a border. I just want to see how everything is going to be affected. So a border, and we're going to add padding for the vertical. We're going to say 2, and then horizontal padding, I'm going to say 3, like that. And then I want it to be rounded. So I want rounded, maybe large, like that. Yes. And then I want to also add a shadow. So it's simple. You just click shadow and we can see that there's a bit of a shadow. Maybe it's too dark. So I'm going to increase that. I'm going to say shadow medium, like that. And then I'm going to add the shadow's color. And that's going to be a shade of yellow 400, like that. And then I want the background color of the button to be yellow 400 as well, like that. Okay, but that shadow is too big, so I'm going to stick with small. And we want to change the text of our button text, and we're going to say text gray, maybe shade of 900, like that. Okay, let me remove the border. I don't need it anymore. Oops, like that. Okay, and we want to add a hover state to our button, and I'm going to say hover text to be a lighter shade. So I'm going to say gray, gray 800. And I also want the background color to be of a lighter shade of yellow. So I'm going to say BG yellow 300, like that. And this is what we get. And I'm going to extend a screen so you can see our navbar in play. And okay, so I still have the border. I have to remove that border. And let me go here. Let me remove the border. And there we go. Our navbar is looking great. Now let's work on making it responsive. And how we're going to do this is I'm going to head over to our menu items. And since the div is the parent container, we want to make sure that we want to hide this when our screen reaches a certain width or certain screen resolution. And how we can do that is by adding max MD and putting hidden there. So you can see that the menu items have come back. They've only come back because, let me hover this. As you can see, our min width is only going to be applied if the screen resolution reaches a width of 768 pixels. And when that does happen, it's going to make sure that our menu items are hidden. So let's just test it out. And there we go. We see that our menu items were hidden. And there we go. It's working perfectly. And we also want to hide our login button when it reaches that breakpoint. So I'm going to say max MD hidden as well, hidden like that. And if you want to read more about how to apply different breakpoints with Tailwind, then we can just go to responsive web design. Here we go. And then we're given breakpoint prefix. So we have small screens, which apply to 640 pixels. And then we have medium with the corresponding minimum width. And the largest one is 2XL. And so that's how you can apply different prefixes for different breakpoints. Okay, so let's go back to our navbar. So we have hidden everything. So I want to make sure that now we want to show our menu hamburger. So we first have to build it. And another thing is I want to make sure when our menu items are hidden at this screen resolution, we want to make sure our hamburger is shown at that screen resolution. So we're going to add block like that. Okay, now let's start with our hamburger. Let's start building it. So I'm going to give it a width of 8 and a height of 1 because I don't want it to be that big. And I'm going to give it a background color of pink with a shade of, I think 600 would do just fine. Okay, so we have a problem. Our menu is not showing up, but we definitely know that it's there. And this is because, again, span is an inline element, so width and height cannot be applied to it. So we need to make sure that we display it block like so. And I want to give our span items a bit of space in between them. So I'm going to say margin bottom, maybe margin bottom 2. Okay, that is great. I feel like one should move. Maybe this one. Okay, no. Yeah, just 2 like that. Should be removing is the one at the bottom. So we're going to remove that margin. And we see that our hamburger is now horizontally aligned, which is great. And I want to actually make this a bit too nice, like maybe the design a bit. So it might not be a hamburger, but I believe that looks great now. And there we go. We just designed our navbar and made it responsive using Tailwind CSS. So now we're going to head on and build our hero section. So this one is going to be our hero section, hero section. And then inside this, we want a section tag. And inside our section tag, we want to have a div. And inside this div, we want to have an h1, with a class plus a p tag with a class plus another p tag with a class plus a button for our CTA, and it should look something like this. And I'm going to name it here. So this one is hero text. And then for here, we want to say this is for our hero image. And then we want to have a div, and inside this div, an image with a class. Okay, so let me just make that look nice and neat. And there we go. Okay, so let's go to Unsplash, and we're going to search duck donut, and we're going to right click and copy the image address, and we're going to be pasting it in here. And this is how it should look. There we go, we have our image. And before I forget, let me just increase the height of our section, and there we go, we have a full height. Okay, now we're going to add in our content. So this one will be have a donut in donut, like that. And then we want to capitalize this, so we're going to use the capitalize class. And then inside here, we're going to have our lorem ipsum, our random text. And then inside this one, we're going to have like a tagline. So I'm going to say get more and was it like maybe buy more? Yeah, I think buy more and get more today, something like this. And then our CTA, I'm going to say find more, like that. And I want to have a border around it so I see what is going on. Okay, now we have everything sorted out. Let's see how it looks. Ooh, as you can see, it's not next to each other. So we must make sure that both our parent divs, the div for our text and the div for our images, have a full width, and then we're going to apply flex so that they are next to each other 50-50. Okay, so let's just do that. I'm going to add a width of 100%, like that. And also I want to add a border so that I can see if things are overflowing outside the box, and it will help me to debug if we have any issues. Okay, and I also want to add a border for our section just to see if anything is overflowing as well. Okay, and now we're going to align that, and we're going to say flex, and we're going to make sure that they are horizontally aligned as well. So I'm going to say items center, like that. Okay, and that's looking much better now. Okay, and what I want is that when our screen size is less than 768 pixels, I want these two to be on top of each other. So I'm going to say max MD, that is our breakpoint, and I'm going to say flex call. So as we hover this, I applied flex direction column, so they are on top of each other, just like so. And I want that our section and navbar to have a bit of space in between them, each other. So I'm going to say max MD and margin top to at least be 10. Yep, like so. I think that is reasonable enough. Okay, and there we go. And let's look here. Nothing is affected, nothing is, yeah, everything is looking fine. So this image is not as dark as I would like it to be. So we're going to be using the contrast class, and this is going to make our image appear darker and make it blend in more with our background. Okay, there we go. And I also want to give our image an object cover so that it is at its fullest length and a 100% width, like so. And what else? Okay, here I want to make sure that any content is hidden if there's any overflow. Okay, so there we go. And I want to make sure that our height is at least 75%. Let me see. I forgot how to set it. I think it's 2. Let me see. No, that's 50% height. I think it's 3. Now let's see. 75% height. Yep, like that. And I also want to display it flex. And we're going to align things center. So our image is centered like so. And yeah, that's looking great so far. Let me see how it looks on the big screen. Okay, that looks great. And we're going to be working on how it should look on a smaller size screen. But for now, let's just work on styling our text. And here we're going to increase our text size to be extra large. Okay, extra large is a bit too small for me. So I think I'm going to stick with 7XL. And we want to make sure that when it's small, at least it could be 5XL. The text could be 5XL like that. And also, I don't want this to be on one line, so I'm just going to give it a width of 96 like that. And let's see how it looks on a big screen. Okay. Maybe I don't want that, but instead I could just put a breakpoint here, and then this one could always be on the next line like that. And let's add text color to our heading. So I'm going to go with text blue, a shade of 400 like that. And I want the font to be semi-bold like that. And yeah, I think our text heading looks nice. And I want it to be a bit to the top. So I'm going to say bottom, margin bottom to be 10. And we have that. Okay, that's great. Now let's style our random text here, lorem ipsum. So this one, I'm just going to give it a text large, XL. And we make sure that when it's on a small screen, it is text, perhaps base. Yeah, or maybe that one is too small. So I'm just going to say, yeah, but no, base is fine. I'll stick with base. And then we want to make sure there's a margin bottom that's separating it between the tagline and the, yeah, the heading like that. So it is aligned perfectly now. And let's see how it looks on the big screen. There we go. I like how it looks. And now let's style our tagline. And this one, I'm going to say text yellow. I want it to be shade of maybe 400. I think that looks great. And the text size is perfect. Maybe on a small screen, it could be text small, like so. And let's give it some spacing between the button. And let's see, maybe I can give it a bit more, 8 like that. Okay, and there we go. Maybe 8 is a bit much. The 6, yeah. And yeah, and let's make this one a bit dark. I feel like it's too light. So I'm going to say text gray and give it a shade of 300 like that. Okay, and it looks great. So I feel like there's a bit of, there's no margin in between the sides. So I want it to be compact a bit. So I'm going to say margin 4, maybe. Let's see if that has any effect. Well, not margin, padding. Padding 4, like that. Yep, there we go. We have our own padding. And then some vertical padding. Going to say 4, and our image is doing okay in the meantime. Okay, and there we go. Actually, let me just change this one. Let me say center, and our image should be centered. Okay, and there we are. It's looking great so far. And finally, let's style our CTA. So our CTA, we are going to say padding X to be 4, maybe 6. And then padding Y, I want it to be 4. Ooh, that's a bit too much. Yep, that one is fine. And then I want a border radius of maybe large. So I'm going to say rounded large. or maybe just large like that, or maybe rounded full once. Yep, like that. I want it like that. And I'm going to add a shadow, and I want my shadow to be small, and the color of our shadow will be shadow pink, shade of 600. Okay, and then I want our background color to be a shade of pink, 600, like that. And then I'm going to be removing the border like so. And there we go. Now let's add a hover state to our button, and it's going to be like here, hover, and I want our shade to be lighter, so I'm going to say pink 500. And there we go. We see that we're hovering over our button. And now let me just give our image and our hero text some space. And I'm going to say margin bottom to be 4. Okay, maybe 6, like so. And yeah, I think that looks great. And let's see how it looks on big screen. Okay, that looks great. And now let's remove all the borders and everything. So I'm going to remove this border here. And let me see. Let's remove those. And there we go. Our website is looking great. So far, our landing page is looking great. And it is completed. So and we see that our image is contained within its box. So yeah, everything is responsive and is working as it's supposed to. But one final thing which I like to do is I like to make sure that our navbar stays in one position so that when we scroll, it doesn't have to go up. So we're going to make sure that our navbar has a sticky position, and I'm going to give it a top of 0, right of 0, left position 0, and let's see now. Okay, we need a background color for it, so I'm going to say BG black, like so, and there we go. It's working perfectly. But let me test and see if any of these elements are perhaps going to go on top of our menu. Okay, yes, definitely we see that the image is going on top. So we want to apply our Z index. So I'm going to say 10. Hopefully that works. Oh, yay, you see now it works perfectly. And there we go. Let me just remove the duplicate code. And yeah, there we go. And we finally built it and we are done. So everything is working as it should. Our hover states on our navbar and our login page, and our image is aligned correctly. And this is our final product. And now let's check out if it's going to look good on most mobile devices. And I'm going to use this Chrome extension by the name of Responsive Viewer. So basically, it's going to allow us to see how our landing page is going to look on different screens. And let me click that. But before we do that, please don't forget to save your work before it's erased for like forever. And let me just click on that and let's see how it looks on different screens. And there we go. We see that it looks great. Everything is working fine on Galaxy S9 Plus and Note. And there we go. And let's see for tablet. This one is medium screen. There we go. And we have a large screen for us here, and we have a laptop. So this is how it's going to look on laptops, and a Kindle Fire. This is how it's going to look like. Okay, and there we go. We see it is responsive and it was not so difficult, but was straightforward, setting responsive breakpoints using Tailwind CSS. And don't forget the challenge. Do make sure that you add a footer to our landing page to get started with your Tailwind CSS journey. That's how you build a landing page using Tailwind CSS and how to use media queries in Tailwind to make it responsive. I hope you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed using Tailwind CSS, and hopefully you'll be using it more into your future projects. I am treciaks, and I'm all about teaching you how to code something superb, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Do make sure that you like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more of Tailwind CSS content, because I will be making more. Okay then, I'll see you soon. Bye!